I want to talk about steelmanning and strawmanning, and in particular, the limits of steelmanning. So let's start off with strawmanning. Now, strawmanning is an informal fallacy, which involves presenting a view that you are opposed to in its weaker form, and then rejecting the view because of problems with its weaker form. Strawmanning implies that you know that there is a stronger form, and you are maybe consciously or unconsciously, you're nonetheless going for the low-hanging fruit, for the weaker form of the argument in order to reject that. So strawmanning isn't quite the same as a person who is really ignorant of the stronger versions of the view they're critiquing, and unwittingly they simply reject the weaker form while not ever knowing that there is a stronger form. Those people are not technically strawmanning. They're simply unaware of the fact that the view they're rejecting has a stronger version. But a strawmanning does involve this fallacy of rejecting the weaker form of an argument as if it is the stronger form. Steelmanning, as you can imagine, is the opposite of strawmanning. Steelmanning is the intentional presentation of a view to which you are opposed in its strongest form, in order to explain essentially why rational people of goodwill can end up disagreeing with you. Now, the other day, I posted a tweet where I talked about the limits of steelmanning, in particular with respect to the one thing that everybody's talking about as of late October 2020, namely Donald Trump. I mean, everybody's talking about Donald Trump and COVID pretty much, and often in the same breath. So I ended up talking about Donald Trump in this tweet, and what I said was that the claim that that if people hold the view that Donald Trump is a good leader, that is not a view at this point that you should steelman anymore. It's not a defensible view at all. And so I got pushback from some people saying, well, you should steelman all sorts of views, whatever their views, which was an interesting claim. See, what those people are saying is no matter what the view, you should always try to steelman it. So I asked a person on Twitter who made that claim, I said, okay, why don't you steelman white supremacy for me? The person said, well, I can't do that in a tweet. So I said, well, you don't have to take one tweet. Take as many tweets as you want and steelman white supremacy for me. They never got back to me. Why didn't they get back to me? I suspect the reason they never got back to me is because actually they recognize that they're wrong. That there does come a point where a position to which you are opposed is so wrong, so errant, so flawed, that it would actually be quite improper to steelman the position. And I think white supremacy is an excellent candidate for that. I mean, what would it look like to steelman white supremacy? To try to say, hey, I understand how rational people of goodwill can be white supremacists. No, they can't. What you can do is this, and I do actually advocate doing this. I advocate exploring and explaining why people can come to hold views that can't be steelmanned. You can provide, for example, you can say, well, this person is just unaware of vast categories of information that clearly falsify their view. Perhaps they've been brainwashed in a particular belief community. And so for that reason, they hold their view. And so, for example, if you meet an 18-year-old white supremacist who was raised by white supremacists out in a rural commune, the fact that you learn that they were raised by white supremacists with no exposure to non-racist ideals, that provides a significant factor to explain why they are a white supremacist. Doesn't mean that you steelman the view of white supremacy, however, because you are still saying there's categorically no defense of the position of white supremacy. What you instead have is a mitigating circumstance to explain why this person can hold a view that is in fact indefensible. That they hold it because they've been brainwashed, because essential information has been withheld from them. It is not a moral or rational position in any sense, but they hold it because of no fault of their own. And you could point that fact out, and that would be a mitigating circumstance, but it doesn't make white supremacy a defensible view, nor does it mean that you should steelman white supremacists. Those are just two different issues. Now, this brings us to a really interesting conundrum. You can say this, okay, well, there are some people who have that view, let's say, of Christianity. There are some, and I've met many of them, atheists, who think Christianity is beyond steelmanning, right? That there's no rational or moral defense of Christianity whatsoever. And so they take the same stance toward Christianity that I take toward white supremacists. You can't defend that view. All you can do is come up with mitigating psychological circumstances, rationales, etc., to explain why a person comes to hold a view that is ultimately indefensible, morally or evidentially or otherwise. And so are we now backing into the position to say, okay, so then the atheist who says that Christians cannot be steelmanned have a defensible position themselves? Well, here's the interesting thing. I think, first of all, I think no, I think that doesn't follow at all. What it does is simply illustrate an important fact, that for each one of us, when we make judgments as to which positions are defensible in some degree and thus can be steelmanned, and which positions are utterly indefensible, so that the only defense, quote unquote, we could give of them is to explain why this person's culpability is significantly diminished because they've been brainwashed or they haven't been exposed to certain evidence or something else. The way that we distinguish those two different positions will ultimately come down to how we ourselves evaluate the evidence available to us. If you think there is any case at all to be made for Christianity, and to understand why people hold it, then you could think it can be steelmanned. If you think there's utterly no defense of it, you will not think it's steelmanned. The fact that people disagree about that, however, doesn't mean there's no fact of the matter. And I think the fact of the matter clearly is that Christianity can and indeed should be steelmanned. And I think atheism also can and should be steelmanned. There is a defense to be made of the view, and you should try to make that defense as strong as possible if you are a Christian, for the sake of neighborliness, of extending the golden rule, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. But for positions that you think are not defensible in any way in terms of credible evidence sustaining the position, at that point, you don't steelman the view anymore. You simply point out these mitigating factors to explain why a person could end up holding an indefensible view. And that, I think, is the appropriate response to white supremacy, but not to Christianity or atheism. And frankly, I think it is also the position with respect to the claim that Donald Trump is a good leader. I want to clarify, however, I'm not saying that even at this point, October of 2020, that you cannot steelman a vote for Donald Trump. I think you can do that. I think you could steelman the position to say that purely on pragmatic grounds, Trump is the lesser of two evils. And he's given us certain things like conservative judges and benefits to Israel, which you might value in terms of their geopolitical status in the Middle East, and speaking out against abortion and protecting religious freedoms. And because of those things, you ultimately think that a vote for Donald Trump is defensible over a vote for Joe Biden. That is a defensible position. I mean, you could steelman that position. I think you should. But I don't think you can steelman the position that, full stop, Donald Trump is a good leader. I think that is a position that is indefensible and that should not be steelman because the evidence is profoundly against the claim that Donald Trump is a good leader. At most, I think you could defend the position that Donald Trump would be a less bad leader than Joe Biden, but I don't think you can defend the view that he is a good leader or could be a good leader. And so those are my quick thoughts on why you should steelman and when you should steelman, or what are the limits of steelmanning opposing views.